In WordPress, the post grid holds a lot of potential for getting much more creative with your content. And in today's video, I'll be taking the recently released Dynamic Posts version 2 for Dynamic Content for Elementor for a spin and demonstrate some of the powerful features it has to offer. But first though, this is a sponsored tutorial by Dynamic Content for Elementor. However, I am not going to give you any opinions on the plugin. Instead, I'm simply going to demonstrate some of the features it offers, and then you can make your own mind up if it's a plugin that you'd like to look at in a little bit more detail. So with all the legal stuff out of the way, let's just jump into Elementor and see what we can do with Dynamic Posts version 2. So what we're going to take a look at today is the Dynamic Posts version 2. Now, this is a massive update to Dynamic Contents for Elementor and has a huge amount of different options and features and things you can do with it. It's way beyond what I can cover in one single video. So I'm going to give you more of an overview of the features in this one so you can get a feel for it and see how you could then start to dive in a little deeper, take a look at some of those extra features, and hopefully take a look at including this in a future project. So I've gone ahead, installed everything, and created a new page ready to start taking a look. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a search for PostGrid, and from there we're going to put in PostGrid version 2. So there's our Dynamic Posts v2. I'm going to drag and drop that into our page, and let's just make a little bit of room for this before we do anything else. So let's just add a bit of space top and bottom. Okay, so you'll see we start off with a very familiar looking layout. We've got different posts listed in a typical grid kind of fashion. So now we have the options to choose the kind of skin that we want. So you can see we have grid currently, but we have a lot of extra options inside here. If you wanted a timeline, for example, well, we can do exactly that. We get a visual representation of that particular skin layout underneath, so you can see exactly the type of thing you're doing from a quick glance. We can do, we've got carousels, we've got a ton of different options. Let's put that back to the grid option. Now underneath that, again, we've got some more choices we can make. Pagination, as his name would suggest, allows us to go through when we have a lot more posts available. And then we can choose the sort of post type that we want for this particular layout. So you can see we've got left, and you see that we'll put the pictures on the left hand side, text and everything on the right hand side, and then you can obviously adjust the various different aspects inside the grid itself. So we have 4 columns, we might want to set that to be 2 columns or maybe 1 column. So you can see you can easily come in and fine tune this. And then when you come into the grid, you have more options again. Now currently we only have flex, masonry has come in soon, but we do have the blog option. So we can click on that, and that will allow us to just change the way certain things look. So that's pretty cool. We can even apply custom templates to, for example, the first item. We can even choose the first item column layout then. So you may want to style things slightly differently. So you can see we've got the first column, and we can set that up to be whatever kind of ratio we want. And we can set that across the various different types of devices. So just a brief glance at these first couple of options, and you can see there are tons and tons of styling, customization options to get this to look exactly how you want it to. So let's hop back into the Dynamic Posts first section and change that. Let's try something different. You can see we've got a range of different styles. We can set things up really nice. However, if you find you don't have something you want to use inside there, you can always make your own template using the page layout, the page template as part of Elementor free. You don't need the Pro version, so you can just use and create your own custom template simply using a post template layout. And I'll show you that a little later on so you can see how it works. Okay, so let's just take a look at changing some of these options. Let's put this grid back to 4, for example. Now you can see what we're getting at the moment is we're getting this first image because we've chosen this blog layout. So this is our first post, which is getting more weight to it. So that's set to entire full width, and underneath we've set this up to have multiple columns. So we can change that if we want to. We could say we want that to take up half, for example, then you get a different layout again. Now you can also then come in and customize the various different aspects of this. So let's just say we put this back to the Flexbox, for example. You can see we get this kind of layout. We can set this over to blog, for example, and we start to get a different kind of layout. And like I say, you have control over the various different aspects of this, whether you want to use flex, grow, the vertical position of your content. All those options are available to you, so you really can get in and fine tune and customize everything about the layout. Now, if you're using one of the predefined layouts, you might not always want to have everything that's being displayed here. You might only want to have the thumbnail and the title, for example. Well, you can change that by coming down to the item setting. Once we choose that, we can now enable and do various different things, including ordering. So we might say we want to put the date above the image, for example. Well, we can do that. You can see the date now appears above the image, full drag and drop. You may say you don't actually want to display the date. Well, we can expand that and we can say we'll hide it. And you see, that's now hidden. You switch it back on, you can go through the content, the formatting, the published date, the last modified date, the styling, advanced, so there's a ton of options inside here to really tweak this right down to the nth degree. So let's just say we don't want to have the content available. Well, we'll hide that. And now we just get a much simplified layout. So let's just switch that back on for now. Okay, so there's everything back in order. You've also then got custom meta fields. If you want to use those, you can control the hover effect. And if we expand that out, we have different hover effects. You can see we've got different animations. So you say pulse, for example. So when you mouse over, you start to get these effects. You can remove that if you don't want that. And you can also affect the image. So you can adjust various different things like opacity, apply filters to it, all those kinds of cool things. Then if we move on and take a look at the query, you can see inside there we have a lot of options on exactly how we represent our data, what kind of data we want to represent, and a whole range of other really powerful features. So at the moment we're just looking at from post type. So it's just going to look at any kind of post type. And if we want to, we can filter that to be posts, pages. If you create custom content using advanced custom fields and so on, they'd be listed inside here as your custom post types, all those kinds of useful bits. You can also apply based upon the post status. You can see we've got published, draft, and so on. So you can set that up. Ignore sticky posts, the number of posts, the offset you may want to do, your ordering, your descending, you can exclude things. You can see there's an abundance of things here. But that's not just the only thing. We've got from post types, we can also take a look at dynamic, and that changes over to various different other features. We've got from post parent if we want to use that. You've got relationships if you're using more advanced relationships as part of ACF or a tool like that. And also from specific posts. So you can easily come in and just choose exactly what post you want to display. All those options are available inside here. So you should have no real limitation on how you can display your data, what data you want to display, how to order it, any offsets. Just a huge ton of info we can just sort of pull into this. If we take a look at your query filter, you can also filter things by date, term, author, and meta key. If you're using meta keys, again, like I say, if you're using something like advanced custom fields, you can pull in meta key fields and you can use those to query against. So, tons of options. So now we've gone over some of the basics of what you can do. Let's take a look at creating something using the PostGrid 2. We're going to start off with a pretty simple example, but to show you all the customization options you have to set things up the way that you want, we're going to create this sort of carousel slider. As you can see, we mouse over, we get some information slide in, we can easily go through to the different sections, we can use this, we can just scroll it back and forth, we can use the arrows, we can even use the little navigation dots at the bottom. We can control, style, and do everything we need to get this the way that we want. And this is the beauty of using the Post 2. We have control over pretty much every single aspect of not only what we show, but also how it displays. And if you can't do it inside the plugin itself, we can utilize the control and functionality that we have with Elementor templates, even using the free version of the page templates. So we'll take a look at that later, but let's take a look at creating this now so you get a feel for what kind of things you can actually do with the plugin. Okay, let's just get stuck in now and start building things. Let's just search for the post widget. We're going to drag that onto our page and we'll just simply select this section and we're going to add a little bit of space above and below just to give us a bit of breathing space. Next thing we want to do is choose the layout that we want to work with. So making sure we've got the widget selected, we're going to choose the skin and we're going to change that to carousel. This now opens up all the options for styling and setting everything up the way that we want it to. I want to create this hover effect, so we're going to choose the float option. Once that's set, we're going to just choose the carousel tab and now we can start to configure things. You have a lot of options available inside here and obviously you can configure this any way that you want, including how you want things to look on mobile, desktop and tablet. We're going to keep this really simple and straightforward just so you get a feel for things. We want to use navigation. You can see this automatically puts the arrows left and right. We can also then set up any pagination or scroll bar options. If we come down underneath that, we've got the options then for making sure that we can style things the way that we want. So at the moment, the arrows don't really stand out on here. So what we're going to do is we're going to set those to be white. Now, obviously, if you're using global colors, you can access those. I'm not setting things up like that right now. So I'm going to just choose the colors independent just for this widget. Now we dealt with the navigation, we're going to hop over to the pagination option and do the same inside there. We're going to set our bullet color to be white so we can see those underneath. And you can change border types and bullet types and all those kinds of things if you want to. We're going to leave those as they are at their default. Scroll bar, I'm not going to change anything on there right now. The next thing we're going to come to is the items, and this is where we can configure what's going to be displayed and various different styling options for each of those items that will be displayed. So the item section is where you can go through the visibility, the ordering, and the styling of every single piece that makes up this particular slider. So we're going to come in the image first of all, we'll expand that, and you can see inside there we have content, style, and advanced. We can also enable or disable this by using the show option. We're going to set everything up inside here now. So we can choose the size of the image. So we might want to go for a higher resolution version if we have that available. And you can set your ratios and so on. What we're going to do is we're going to set an overlay inside here because we want to have some separation between the background image and the text that's going to go over the top of it. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to just change and apply a color to this. And we'll just choose, we'll go for black for this example. And you can then obviously adjust the opacity to taste. So I'm going to set this at about 0.5. Next, we'll go down to the date option, and from there we can set everything we want for the date. So what we're going to do is just change our style on there, and we're going to just set the color to be white. You can see now that shows us the date. Title, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. We're going to set this to be white. And if you want to change your font styling, size, and so on, you can do all that inside here too. Okay. So we don't want things like terms of taxonomy and so on and content. So what we need to do is open that up and set that to be hidden. Same for content, we'll set that to be hidden. And we're also going to just change the order of the title and the date, so the title sits above the date. Now don't worry too much if it doesn't display inside here right away. It will update, and when you see it on the front end, it'll be in the right way. So we do the same thing for author, we're going to disable that. Same thing for custom meta, we don't want that information on there. Read more. And finally, our post type. So we're just getting a really nice, simple layout on here. Next, I quickly want to just close this gap up between the date and the title. So underneath the date setting, we're going to come into the margins, unlink those, and we're going to set a -20 pixel space there. So we've done the main part now. We've created our slider. Next thing we want to do is create a hover effect so we get some kind of interaction when you mouse over the image to see something's actually going to happen. To do that is really easy. We'll close this section down, and we're going to come down to the hover effect option. And now we can control the hover effect for the block, the entire block, the image, or the content. So you can set different parameters for each of these. We're going to go to the content section, and we're going to do in there, we're going to change the float text zone effect from this, and we're going to set this to slide top. You can control the effect timing function, so we've got ease in and ease out, a whole range of different options. We'll leave it to ease in, ease out. And now we find when we mouse over, we now get that effect, and when we go back out, it's now gone. So we can update this page, and we've now created our interactive slider. You can see we can test this inside the browser itself without actually coming out of Elementor, which is great to see. And then when we want to check it out, we can come to our preview, and from there we can see there's our hover effect, our text, and our date pops in. We can scroll this simply by dragging, and again you can see the animation in the top left hand corner. We can use the arrows, or we can use the dots. So it's really easy to set things up. And if you want to filter the information, you've got your query controls underneath where, again, we can choose all the different options we have, choose post status, we can set offsets if we wanted to. So we may say we don't want the first item inside here. Well, we could set a simple post offset of 1. You see that will update, and now we offset the first post. So lots of different options to set everything up, and you can see it's very easy to set up this incredibly simple but useful slider or carousel. Now coming back into the Dynamic Post V2, we can choose other options, and we can take what we've already created across with those in various different instances. So for example, we've got the skin is set to carousel. Let's just change that to something like dual carousel. And that gives us a slightly different variation. And you can see if we update this and we preview it, we now have a nice way of creating another way of navigating through. So you can see we can click on any of these images, we can use the scrolling effect, we can use the arrows, we can use the dots, we can get totally creative with how everything is set up inside you. And you have full control over these bottom elements as well. We come back in, you can see we have a new tab now called Dual Carousel Thumbnails, at which point we can configure everything inside there, including the status for normal and active, the titles, all those things are fully controlled by us, all directly inside this particular widget. So you can start off with one idea, then you can test things out and play and see exactly what else you could create. So for example, if we come back out one more time and take a quick look at the 3D option, and we'll just open that up, you'll see we now get a 3D carousel taking over various different aspects of the design that we created using these style of items, for example, and these settings we've configured. Now we can easily come in and test these out, and we can come into the settings for this particular carousel type, and we can open that up, and you can see we can change between circle and row. We'll let it refresh a second, and there we go. So now we have this row effect. We can adjust the size plane if we want to, make that bigger so each of those items is larger inside the display. As you can see, it makes it a little larger now. If we want to allow the mouse wheel, for example, we can do that. And then we can use the mouse wheel as opposed to relying just on these arrows. All very easy to do. And if you change this to like circle, for example, we also get the depth blur effect. So we can add a slight sense of depth of field into for the sort of posts in the background, as it were. And again, you know, we can combine that with the wheels, with the arrows. All those options are there for us. So there's tons of things you can test out, tons of creativity that you can use to get something that's really quite unique using the Dynamic Post version 2 widget. Okay, so let's move on now to using a template system as part of Elementor. So what we're going to do, add a new template, set it to be page, and from there, we're just going to give this a name. So you're going to call this Dynamic. Okay. We'll create our template. I'm going to keep this a really, really simple design just to show you, but you can get as creative as you want and use anything that you have available as part of Elementor and or Elementor Pro. So we're going to start off just by adding in a single column, single row. That's all we're going to do. We're going to give this a default height of minimum height of 400, and we're going to say we want the content to be at the bottom. We're also going to come in and add in just a little bit of padding to this. So let's just drop in 50 pixels of padding inside there, just to give us a bit of breathing room around the outside edge. Okay, so with that done, we're going to come over to our style section and we're going to set a background image. Now, what we're going to do is set this to be a classic background, and we're going to come down, choose the dynamic tags option from Elementor Pro, and we're going to say insert featured image. Once we've done that, we're going to set the position. Now, unfortunately, you can't really see what's going on at the moment because there's no post selected for this particular example. But don't worry, it is all actually taking place. So we're going to say no repeat, and we're going to set this to cover. So as long as you're kind of used to working with the background and so on, you kind of know exactly what you're doing with this. Next, let's hop over to the background overlay, and we're just going to give this a little bit of a gradient to give us some separation. So we're going to set, doesn't really matter what color you set for your top color, because we're going to set that to transparency, and we're going to set the bottom to black. I'm simply going to set this to be pretty much transparent. There we go. Okay, that being said, we've got most of what we need inside there. Next thing we're going to do is drop in the actual content that we're going to display, which will be the title and some basic meta information. For this, we're going to come back to our widgets, and we're just going to do a search for post, and we want post title. So we're going to drag and drop that into there. And we're going to do the same thing again. We're going to come back into our widgets, and this time we're going to do a search for our edit post info. So post info. And we'll drag and drop that underneath there. So there's our basic info. Now we can just style that if we want to. So I'll quickly just change the colors. We'll set those to white so they stand off the background a little bit, and the same for the text. And we'll just adjust the size of this a little bit. The same goes for the title. So we'll just simply set that to be white as well, and we'll adjust the size on there accordingly. Okay, that looks pretty good. And we'll just make sure that everything is set up to sit at the bottom of our post. So we set that to bottom, and there we go. So what we've done now is we've set our template up. So we're simply going to publish this template. So we've saved it, and now we can hop back into our post grid, and we can change everything up inside there. So we're going to change this over this time to the grid option, and we're going to choose the Elementor template for our style. So we're going to just choose that option, and you can see that now says give us the template name. So what we're going to do is we're going to just type in dynamic. There's our template, and there's our design. As you can see, it pulls all of that in. Each one of these now picks up that design, the styling, and everything else that goes with it. And now we can configure the way everything looks directly inside here. So we're going to make these linkable. We can do that. They're linkable. We want to set any of the grid options up. We can set all that up. So we can see at the top, we've got this one column wide. We could change that to so-and-so, or we could change it to like this. As you can see, we can get really creative with how all of this works. Have a little bit of a play about, test things out, see how everything looks, set everything up the way that you want, and get really creative with the layouts. So pretty cool. This has covered just a couple of examples of what you can do with the Dynamic Post Grid version 2 with part of Dynamic Content for Elementor. Hopefully it's piqued your interest and shown you just some of the things you can do. And when you use it in conjunction with the template features for Elementor, you really can get super creative with how everything is set up. But even without it and just the Dynamic Content for Elementor plugin, you have tons and tons of really creative options so you can play about with to get something a little bit more unique. Now hopefully this has shown you how you can take Dynamic Posts version 2 and get super creative with the features it offers. If you'd like to learn more or grab a copy of Dynamic Content for Elementor, there's a link in the description below. It is an affiliate link, and if you decide to use that, it costs you absolutely no more money, but does help support the channel. Now to continue learning about the abundance of features on offer in Dynamic Content for Elementor, click on this playlist now. That's going to get you up to speed with some of the things you can do. Now if you found value in the video, give it a thumbs up, as that really helps the YouTube algorithm. If you didn't though, feel free to hit that thumbs down button twice, as that works pretty well too. My name is Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.